We've been, for those of you who have been here for the last 4 weeks or so, we've been in a series called 50 Days of Transformation, or Transformed is the other title we're calling this. And we've been looking at all these different areas and how the gospel can transform our lives, okay? And it's not just this blanket word transform, but it's very specifically transforming different parts of our lives. And we've been examining that in the last 4 weeks. We looked at how the gospel transforms us spiritually, physically. Last week we looked at how it transforms us mentally and talking about how we manage our thoughts, how we manage our mind. And this week we're moving on to a new area of health, a new area of transformation. And that's emotional. Emotional. I feel like I'm saddled with all the really good ones. 2 weeks ago I was talking about stress on a Sunday morning, and now I'm going to talk about our emotions on a Sunday morning. We're talking about how you feel, your feelings. Any emotional people out here? Any emotionally driven people? I asked this 2 weeks ago when we talked about stress, but I said, if someone were to write a list of characteristics of, what you are like, would stress be one of them? But would emotional be one of them? That's something that's very, very telling about a person. Wait, on the other hand, this is more me. Are any of you one of those people that is not emotional until it builds up so much it just explodes in one big moment? Anyone else like that? That's me. I kind of bottle it up and just boom. But it ends up being very important how we talk about this kind of stuff. And I know we tend to think, for whatever reason, in a lot of Christian circles that, okay, there's the mind and the will, and those are very important. How you manage your thoughts are important, and how your decisions are important. And the emotions are this side thing. They kind of get in the way, and they're an annoyance. But it's very, very important that we learn how to manage our emotions and learn how to let those be transformed in our Christian life as well. Because during Jesus' time on earth, during his ministry, someone once posed him the question. They said, Lord, or Jesus, what commandment do you think is the most important commandment of all of them? In other words, what is the most important thing you think a human being can do to obey God in relation to God? And so Jesus responded like this in Mark chapter 12. He said, you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all of your strength. He said that's the most important thing a human being can do. And notice he didn't just say, you must love God, period. There's a lot of weight behind his description, isn't there? You must kind of love God. You must find a place to love God in all those other things that you love. Kind of fit them in there somewhere. No, this is a description of passion. It's a description of weight. There's force behind this. With all of your heart and your soul and your mind and your strength, this is heavy. That's a passionate kind of love he's talking about, isn't it? That's a passionate love. And of course, when we're talking about passionate things, we're talking about passions, we're talking about what? Emotions. Passions are another word for emotions. And that's what he's describing here. He's talking about the kind of love that is weighty. It's emotional. When we read the Bible, we don't really find that word emotions too often. But that's because you most often find words like passions in the Bible. Or even more commonly, you find the word heart throughout the Bible. And when the Bible talks about heart, it's talking about the things we feel. It's talking about our emotions. And so, in other words, Jesus is saying, look, yes, love God with all of your physical strength. Yeah. Love God with your thoughts. You've got to learn how to manage your thoughts in that way. Love God with all that you are, your soul, but also you love God with your heart as well. Your emotions aren't just some bonus thing. They're part of the package. We have to learn how to manage those in the Christian life as well. It's very important. So we're going to get into this today. We're going to kind of break this down and open it up. But before we do, I want to look at two really quick, important facts about emotions. A couple things we really need to understand before we can go forward here. And here's the first one. God has emotions. God is an emotional God. And we don't tend to think of him this way because we think, oh, he's this big, giant, glowing, spiritual blob up above us, and he doesn't, he's beyond feelings. But if you read the Bible for a little while, you'll see that it is chock full of descriptions of the things that he feels in relation to us. It's constantly describing his joy and his sorrow, his pain, his hatred of sin, the happiness he feels when we respond to him, the sorrow and the brokenheartedness he experiences when we leave him, when we turn away from him. These are all emotions, okay? These are all ways of describing the way that God feels. So God has emotions. And this is what makes him something more than just a robot. This is what makes us able to have a relationship with him, a real relationship, because he's not just this beep, borp, spiritual blob thing. Okay? He's a feeling, moving, living God. And that's what's so cool about it. And then the very fact that we have emotions in itself is because we are made in his image. That is why we have emotions. He made us to be like him, to be able to have the abilities, yes, of the mind and the will, but also of the soul, of the heart, to feel. And so the second point here leads very directly from the first point, and that is the fact that our ability to feel, the fact that we have emotions is a gift from God. In other words, it's not inherently a wicked or an evil thing. And this comes as a surprise to some people because it doesn't always feel like it's a good thing, does it? You have those days where everything's going wrong. Ever had one of those days? I was having one of those days yesterday. Everything was going wrong, and thing after thing. And it wasn't one big thing. It was just a lot of little things that just kept building up. And slowly my irritation level was building. And it went from irritation to anger. And suddenly I'm snapping and I'm blowing up at stuff that I never normally would because my emotions have just led me down this path. And they're influencing me to respond in these negative ways. So emotions don't really seem like a good thing in those situations, do they? But in fact, they're a really great asset, and they're a crucial part of what makes us human beings. They're a crucial part of human life. It's what makes us something more than a robot, because it gives us the ability to perceive value in a thing. To perceive value, to take something from the analytical to the feeling and to the real. It's emotions that make it so when you pick up your newborn child, and you feel the connection, you feel the value of this precious life. And more than just, yes, that is indeed a human child. That is a human specimen. It's more than that, okay? It's your son, it's your daughter. There's a connection, there's a feeling. And it's why people, the first time holding their child, they'll well up with tears and they'll cry, because there's a value there. That's what makes us human beings. And so it's a really wonderful thing. Helen Keller put it this way, and I think she'd be in a really good position to be able to speak with authority about this. She said, "The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen and cannot be touched. They must be felt with the heart." Because that's where there's beauty, and that's where there's passion, that's where there's meaning, that's where there's realness and feeling, apart from just the analytical, apart from the Spock stuff for all you Star Trek fans out there. That's the realness, okay? That's the humanness with us. And so emotions aren't necessarily an evil thing. Yes, they can be destructive when let run loose, just like anything can, right? If there's a lot of potential for good, there's always a lot of potential for evilness as well. But emotions are a wonderful thing, and they're a crucial part of what we are as human beings. And so we got to aim for what we'll call a happy medium, okay? A happy medium between this idea that emotions are everything and this idea that emotions are wicked. Because God gave us a mind, yeah, but he also gave us an emotion, the ability to feel. And they're both very important. So today we're going to look at how we deal with those things. But first, we got to check out this idea here. You say, okay, yes, we have emotions, good, we've established it. No, they're not necessarily evil, but why do we actually have to learn how to manage them? Are they really dangerous? And if so, what is the threat there? And so the first thing we have to look at here is we have to be able to manage our emotions, because feelings are very often unreliable. How many of you know that from experiential knowledge? Feelings can be unreliable. Have you ever had one of those things, one of those decisions facing you that you felt so strongly, like this one right here, this is it, I know it, I feel it in my heart, in my gut, this is what we got to do. And then it just didn't work out at all? Anybody? No? The rest of you guys are just like, your emotions have led you pretty safely for the rest of your lives? Well, I'll tell you, for me, especially, I don't know, as I've gotten older, I feel like my emotions have kind of leveled out a little bit, or I bottle them up better. I don't know which one it is. But when I was younger, I was a very emotional child, and then I would make these very impulse decisions and impulse buys, and I just felt like, you know what, this feels so right, I got to do it, this feels right, and it would blow up in my face, inevitably. Why? I felt like it was right. It's because emotions don't always tell us what's true. They don't always reflect reality. Intuition is often flawed. The gut feeling can often be flawed. And this is what I call the Disney problem. The Disney problem. There's something I like to refer to as Disney syndrome, which Disney animated films have been telling our children for years and years and years and years and years. And I think most of us grew up with this idea, but it's follow your heart. Follow your heart. Listen to your heart. There's songs that say it, but it's a big Disney thing. There's a princess who meets a prince, and they've known each other for like 5 hours, and they're like, yeah, we should get married. This is a wise thing to do. And it's just like follow your heart. And of course, in Disney movies, it always works out perfectly because your heart can't lead you wrong. Wouldn't that be nice? There was a more recent Disney film called Frozen. Anyone seen Frozen? Frozen weirdly had a really nice commentary on Disney syndrome, because you had the princess who meets a prince, and within like 30 minutes they're singing and they're dancing about true love, and then the guy says, you know what, I'm going to do something totally crazy. Will you marry me? And she's like, I want to do something crazy too. Yes, it's true love, let's get married. And they go off to the other main characters to proclaim their true love, and I love the response. The response is, you can't get engaged to someone you just met. You can if it's true love. No, you're not listening to me. You can't get engaged to someone you just met. Why? Because your gut feeling is not always going to reflect reality. It's not always going to be what's true. There's wisdom to consider. Your mind is an important part of it. You can't cut out the mind and leave only the emotions, just like you can't cut out the emotions and leave only the mind, because emotions often will lead you straight down a dead end, a blind alley. People say, well, love is blind. It's because people cut the conscious mind and the will out of love, which is really sad because there's a lot of hard decision-making that comes with real love. They say love is blind because the emotions, they don't see anything but the happiness and the joy. Yes, it's wonderful, perfect, and I'm going to go in this direction. And then suddenly reality hits the emotions, and then it's not happy anymore, is it? And that's the problem. It's Disney syndrome, because you simply can't depend on everything you feel, because not everything you feel is right. Proverbs, which is this book which gives a lot of generalizations about life. It can be very useful if you read it the correct way. But it gives a lot of life generalizations as opposed to life specifics. And in chapter 14 it says, there's a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. There's a path before each of us that seems right, but it ends in death. In other words, we face decisions. And we're going to come to these moments where we're like, our gut tells us yes, but it's not always going to be right, because our feelings are not always reliable. In fact, they're often unreliable. They can often guide us in the wrong direction, because many of us don't know how to manage our feelings. It's a difficult thing to learn, and our world today certainly does not teach that skill. So that's number one. We have to learn how to manage our emotions, because emotions are often unreliable. Our feelings are often unreliable. And number two, and this dovetails right off of it here, because we don't want to be manipulated. We don't want to be manipulated. And how many of you know that emotional manipulation is a thing? It definitely is. And the simple fact is, if we do not control our emotions, if we don't learn how to control our emotions and put them in their place, because there is a place for them, our emotions are going to control us. How many of you are familiar with Nietzsche? He was a very famous atheist philosopher, and I don't really recommend a lot of his books because most of them I don't agree with at all. But he actually had some pretty interesting things to say about emotion. He wrote about that a lot. And he wrote this concept. He said, look, one must keep a tight hold on his heart. You keep a hold of your heart and you be careful with it, because if you let it go, your mind is going to go with it. It's a very simple idea, but it's so true. Have you ever experienced this? You let your emotions go and your thoughts just fly off with it, and what's going to follow? Your will. Your choice is going to fall in that direction too if you let your emotions go off and do their own thing. He said, you've got to keep a hold on your heart so you can keep a hold of your mind, so you can make correct choices, which is very funny for Nietzsche to be talking about correct choices, since he didn't believe in an ultimate reality or morality or anything like that. But I can at least take, give praise where praise is due, right? In other words, look, you keep control of your emotions or you're going to be enslaved to your moods. And how many of us know that moods change? Anyone had a mood swing before? You were really sad one minute and someone made a joke and you're like, I'm happy now. Mood swings happen. And so what happens if our emotions, what happens if our choices are led by our emotions that swing back and forth every other second? It's a scary thing. It's definitely a scary thing, and I think a lot of us have experienced the ramifications of that scary thing. If we don't control our emotions, it's our emotions that will guide us, that will lead us, and not what's right, not our commitments, not our responsibilities, not what's true, not what's wise. How we feel is going to guide our life choices, and that's nutty. And the best salesmen, the best advertisers, they know this very well, and they're trained in how to stir up those emotions in us so we can make that impulse buy, that impulse decision. Make us feel like, you know what, there's only one opportunity. You're going to miss the opportunity, and this is a life changer. You just watch any ad on television. Everything's like, this taco will change your life. And you're like, wow, you know what, I got to get that taco. I got to get that taco. Limited time only. Wow, I got to get over there. What's sad is that many preachers know how to do this too, because you have the message and the power and the authority, and they're stirring up your emotions, and then the music swells right at the end. The music swelling, and he's preaching, and then right on cue comes the plate. It's passing around right as the emotions are at their height. This is one of the reasons why we feel like God told us, don't pass a plate, because this nation has been so burned by this emotional manipulation with preachers. We've got boxes right back there. If you believe in this ministry, you can support it. Otherwise, they're not going to move. They're staying over there. It's these decisions we make based on impulse that are very destructive. And that's where we get impulse buying. Anyone ever made an impulse buy before? Yeah, you shake your guilty heads. I know I have. You end up buying something that you definitely don't need, and sometimes even stuff you don't even want. You're like, why did I do this? What is this?
eBay's the devil.
eBay is there we go. eBay's the devil. I think online shopping is the devil, because you're like, I'm in an impulse mood. Let me go and spend thousands of dollars at a click of a finger. I had a friend who was such an impulsive person. And until he, as this person got older, he got better, but he would just, one time he saw this thing that all his friends had. I really want this thing. And he spent so much money on this thing, and he came back with it, like, this is terrible, this is worthless. And he'd already used it, so it was worthless, so he couldn't resell it. Why did I do that? Because your emotions caught you up. You got caught up with the emotional swell and the good thing. This will make me so happy. I got to get this thing, and the emotions are good, and they're leading you, because we don't know how to manage our emotions. Proverbs, once again, I think puts this really, really well. It says in chapter 25, a person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls. So this is, of course, coming from thousands of years ago, when the average city was in pretty well constant threat of being invaded by other countries and other nations. So you had to have walls to protect the city. And so a city with no walls is under threat of what? Being conquered, right? A person who doesn't have the ability to control themselves, to control not just their mind and their will, but their emotions as well, is like a person that has no defense against the whims that are going to flop you back and forth, against mood swings. And you're going to end up doing things, making decisions, whether it's as silly as an impulse buy or as major as something like blowing up at a family member that just doesn't deserve it, or getting angry, or depressed, or whatever it is. If you don't have the ability to control yourself, you don't have defense against all this stuff, and that's a scary place to be, because your moods whip you around, and suddenly you don't know what's wise to do. You don't know what's right. You don't know what's healthy or safe or true. All you feel is the emotion, and the emotion leading you. And I think that's one of the enemy's favorite tools, is the negative emotion. You get that negative emotion in there, you get the fear in there, you get the resentment and the jealousy and the envy and the bitterness and the worry and the anxiety. And suddenly your path is very shaky. The ground's not so sturdy beneath you anymore. If you don't know how to manage your emotions, you're a city without a wall. You're defenseless. And so those are the reasons why it's very, very important for us to be able to learn how to manage our emotions. And so now to the important part here, to the really important part, what we actually need to do to manage them. Because that's the tricky part. It's one thing I think all of us deep down really know, that we should keep some kind of control over our emotions. But the question is how? And of course, you can read hundreds of self-help books on the exact issue. But the question is how? So we're going to look at three basic things we need to be able to do in order to begin to manage our emotions and experience the kind of emotional transformation that Jesus called us to, learning how to love God with all of our heart. Here's number one. You have to learn how to be able to identify it. You have to learn how to be able to name the thing. In other words, when you're experiencing that moment, the emotions, the emotional overcharge, emotions are raging in you, whether it's a happy thing or a negative thing or whatever it is, you need to be able to pinpoint it and say, here is what I'm feeling. Because you're not going to be able to manage a vague thing. I feel emotional. No. Do you feel angry? Do you feel sad? Do you feel afraid? Do you feel a little bit too enthusiastic? What is it? Pinpoint it. If you can't name it, you can't change the thing. You've got to identify it. So you ask yourself, what am I really feeling? And often that's not what you think you're feeling from the get-go. Or you're not feeling it because of the reasons you thought you were. If, for instance, let's say you come home after work and you're in a bad mood. And then suddenly you're irritated with your family. You're like, well, I'm feeling irritation. Well, hold on, wait a minute. Where'd the irritation come from? Well, I was leaving work and somebody insulted my dignity. Somebody implied that I'm a failure. So then the emotion stirring up from there is maybe some anger from that statement, right? And then maybe some insecurity. What if that's true? What if I am a failure? What if I am not enough? Maybe some worry that you can't measure up. Often you have these things that start. It starts a chain reaction. You have this worry, there's insecurity, and that leads to, well, usually most roads lead to anger for whatever reason. Worry can lead to anger. Insecurity can lead to anger. Fear can lead to anger. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? Why am I really feeling this thing? Because so often we get put into a bad mood by things. You ever said that? I'm in a bad mood. Well, why are you in a bad mood? Because you don't just wake up like, well, I'm in a bad mood. There's always something going on in your head that is leading you to be emotionally volatile. Okay? But there's always a reason. I'm emotional. Well, what happened? What happened today? Why are you in that mood? For me, more often than not, it's a lot of little stuff. It's usually not a massive, one big thing for me. It's a lot of little things. Little, like, manial things, you know? Like, I try to pick a penny up off the ground or something, and I try like 4 times. Come on, get off the ground. Have you ever tried to pick a penny up off the ground and it just won't come? And then, 20 things like that down the road, and suddenly my totally normal mood is laced with irritation. And that irritation is flying over into other things, and little things that my son would do that wouldn't bother me at all, that normally I would find cute or adorable. Suddenly I'm irritated. I'm angry about it. Why are you angry? Why are you irritated? Because you let this process just continue on, and now you're in a bad mood. But what started it, and what's your problem to begin with? You examine it. You learn how to identify the thing, and you ask yourself, what am I really feeling, and what caused the thing? So in other words, like I'm saying here, look, you can't change your problem until you're able to identify it. So if it's worry, okay. If it's insecurity, okay. Fear, anger, whatever it is, learn how to see what it is, and then you can deal with it at the source. So that's number one. Identify it. Name it. Here's number 2. Challenge it. The biggest problem we have is not the fact that we have emotions, okay? It's the fact that we let them do whatever they want. Hear that? It is not the fact that we have emotions that is a problem. Anger is not a sin. Hear that? Jesus was very angry. God gets very angry, but he doesn't sin. Worry, not a sin. Fear, not a sin. if you let those things do whatever they want inside of you, well, they're going to lead you into things that are going to hurt you and the people around you, won't they? And so it's letting the emotion go unchecked and unchallenged that is the problem. So number 2, you have to challenge the thing. You got to challenge it. Don't assume that what is within you is the truth, or is right, or is justified, or that you can just sit in it and be okay. Challenge it. Always ask yourself this. This is so important. Are things as bad as I feel they are? Not as I think they are, as I feel like they are. Because often you're going to find that what you think intellectually and what you feel in your heart aren't aligned. But your heart just blows up what you're thinking in your head to an unmanageable level. Are things as bad as I think they are? The answer is almost always no. On the flip side, are things as good as I think they are? The answer is usually no. Are things really the way I feel right now? What's the real reason I'm feeling this thing? And then, is it true? Is it an accurate feeling? Is it reflected in reality? Is what I'm feeling right now that it is the end of the world and that there is no hope? Is that true? And usually the answer is no. You also have to ask yourself this: is what I am feeling right now helping me or hurting me? Oftentimes that question right there it's enough to get you to change whatever you're feeling, to spur on a change. Is what I'm feeling right now helping me or hurting me? If we can remember to ask that question, the answer is almost always, it's hurting me. If you're really, really angry, okay, is my anger helping anything? Is it even helping me to get what I want? Almost always no. For instance, you ever been in a restaurant and you're really hungry? Like, you're not like, I'm going to eat just because everyone else is eating, but you're like, I am so hungry, I need my food. I come from a family of food mongerers. And so when we're in a restaurant, we're not hanging out, we're like, where's the food? Where's the beef? And so you're in a restaurant and you're hungry and the service is taking a little long, a little too long, and the person who came in after you has already gotten their food, and the person who came in after them has already gotten their food. You're going, I'm hungry. And so that hunger turns into an irritation. And over time, the irritation turns into anger. And you let that build, and you're about to blow up at the waitress. Let's pretend we stop for a second and say, okay, let's evaluate this. Let's evaluate what I'm feeling right now. First, what's the real reason that I'm feeling angry? I'm hungry. Okay, fair enough. Is it true? Yes, I'm hungry and the service is slow. I should have gotten my food by now. Okay, good, fine. Is it helpful or hurtful, what I'm feeling right now? Is it going to help me get what I want in the first place, or is it going to hurt the experience for everyone involved? And what's the answer? It's hurtful. Has making a scene and blowing up at a waitress and making her feel like the scum of the earth because of something she probably can't control, has it ever helped you get what you want in a restaurant? Has it ever furthered the kingdom of God in any sort of way? Or is it just a way of you venting in some kind of twisted emotional gratification? It's really sad when we make a decision that actually hurts the people around us so we can feel emotionally gratified. I feel angry. I want to exercise my anger because that's how I feel. And we run over people, we hurt people, we fracture relationships, we make fools of ourselves and the people around us. And we actively work against the movement of God on the earth in micro ways because we let our emotions do their thing. We're not willing to stop and say, is this helpful or hurtful? Am I just letting my emotions run wild, or is this justified? Here's the thing, the answer is not quelling all emotions. The answer is carefully examining your emotions and refusing to let certain ones do what they want. Because once again, emotions are wonderful. tell you, I will let my emotions run wild if I'm holding my son and I feel overwhelmed with fatherly love for him. Like, you know what? I'm going to let this feeling go. I can just hold him and I can just sob for gratitude. He's my son. But if I'm going to sit in a restaurant and let my anger go, it's not worth it for anyone. It's definitely not worth it for you. So that's number 2. Challenge it. Learn how to look at it and examine it and challenge it. Don't let it go. And here's the last thing, and this is a simple statement with a lot of complicated undertext. Tame it. Name it, challenge it, tame it. Learn how to deal with it. And like I said, that's the real trick. But the simple fact is, if you want to succeed in life, if you want to be successful in whatever area of life you are engaged in, whether it's parenthood, whether it's working any job you can think of, whether it's ministry, whether it's being in a relationship with other human beings, whether it's trying to further the kingdom of God, you've got to learn how to manage your emotions. You've got to learn how to pick your battles, as it were. And really, you've got 2 basic options. Here's the first one. You can change your emotion, change it or channel it, one of those things. Which, in other words, very simply, look at the emotion and just start thinking about something else. People say, oh, okay, count to 10. Take a breath and count to 10. You know why we tell kids to do that? Because in their minds, the thing that's making them angry is dominating their thoughts. And by the end of 10 seconds, they're not really thinking about it anymore. And the emotions change. You know what the funny thing is? I really wish we would just continue doing that as adults. Because we're like, well, I'm an adult now. I'm better at managing our emotions, you know? But not really. Oftentimes, if we would just take a second and breathe, if we would just stand up and move to a different spot, oh, I'm not as angry anymore. Weird. Because emotions respond to what's around you, and they respond to what's in your head. So learn how to change it, or to learn how to channel it to something else. So that's a very practical thing. And here's a very here's a more Christian-y thing. I say Christian-y, but really this is for all human beings. If we would just get this idea, walk close to God. Walk close to God. Walk by the Spirit. Galatians chapter 5. Galatians is this incredible book that is all about the importance and just how much better it is to walk in relationship in the Spirit as opposed to doing your own thing by the world's standards or even just dead religion, okay? It is so much better to experience the living relationship than the dead religion. And Paul says this in Galatians chapter 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And you read the passage he's talking about this in. He's been building up to this idea. If you walk by your own thing, if you walk in dead religion, if you walk by the standards of the world, that's where your root is, okay? That's where your root is. That's the kind of tree you are going to be, and the fruit you will produce will follow in kind. But if you are rooted in the Spirit, if you're rooted in relationship with God, walking with Him day by day, walking closely to Him, that is the kind of root you have. That is the kind of tree you will be, and this is the kind of fruit that you will naturally produce out of your life. People are like, oh, there's the fruit that I should try to do. But the whole point of the book is, no. I'm not telling you try to do these things. I'm telling you try to do this thing. Walk with God. And these things are naturally going to be produced. That's why the word fruit is in there. Because you don't say, I'm going to make this fruit, come on, apple, appear in my hand. You plant an apple tree, right? Yeah. Of course. So create in yourself the kind of tree and the kind of root that is going to produce the kind of fruit that you want. It's as simple as that. And of course, one of the big ones there is, right there, self-control. You walk with God. And whenever you're experiencing pressure from work or at home or whatever it is, what is going to come out of you if you are rooted in a walking, living relationship with God? That stuff. Let's take it the other way. What if you have no connection to God and you're doing your own thing? Maybe you got some church on Sunday morning, but it's no more than dead religion. You're doing your own thing just like the rest of the world is. And you experience that pressure at home or at work. The emotions start riling up. What is going to naturally come out of your life? Envy, bitterness, jealousy, pride, all the stuff that dominates the world. Same idea here. Very simply, seek God, spend time with God, get in the Bible, learn truth, feed yourself on what is true and what is good and what is worthy. And as you root yourself in that kind of lifestyle, in that kind of spirit-led relationship with God, that's the fruit you're going to experience coming out of your life. It's so cool. It's so cool. We don't just get a list of, here are things you should do. He just says, no, just do the one really important thing. And that's just going to start becoming the natural outpouring of your life. I love Christianity. And then if you're having trouble, just ask God for help. It's always a really good option. As we have the band come up here as we begin to wrap up, the simple idea here, okay, is we don't want to be people that are wishy-washy. Because moods are wishy-washy, right? Moods swing, like we talked about. Things change. We don't want to be people that are Paul talks about this, people that are washed to the side every time a big wave comes. Every time there's a change in the winds, our mood changes and suddenly our resolve changes. Suddenly we don't remember our responsibilities or our goals or the things we're passionate about or anything like that. Suddenly our mood has changed and now we're heading in this direction because that's where our mood is leading us. We want to be more rooted than that. We want to be rooted in a relationship with Jesus Christ, producing that natural outflow of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, self-control, faithfulness, these wonderful things that come out of the natural life of someone rooted in relationship with God. That's what we want. So the simple challenge here today as we begin to wrap this up is, do not let your emotions control you, because it's part of the Christian package. Is we're no longer under the control of our whims or of our simple basic desires or whatever else. We have a higher calling. We have a higher goal. We have a deeper root. That's a really cool place to be. That's where I want to be. So Father, for those of us who are listening to this today and we have struggled with our emotions at one point or at many points in the past, I think that's probably most of us. Father, I pray that you would embed this in our hearts, embed this in our minds. We'd leave here today, God, and we'd see the emotions start rising up. We'd look at them closely and we'd say, you know what? Is this helpful? Is this making me more like Jesus Christ? Is this the natural outflow of a life that is rooted in relationship with you, God? And if the answer is no, Father, I ask for your help for every single one of us in this room, to be able to learn to manage our emotions and to aim them at you so we can learn to love you with all of our heart. We love you, Father.